Hey vols, this video is about some basic iMovie tips guided by a wonderful presentation written by our secretary, Jessica Wang. So this part is really important. It's talking about brainstorming and planning. So plan accordingly to make sure you will have everything done in time, don't procrastinate. Make sure that you have all of the elements you need. So this is videos and photos and your audio recordings. You can also make sure you're making the project fun for yourself. You can customize it to your own fortes. Jessica's example is if you like drawing, you can draw some panels. And you may also like photography, so you can add some nice photos you've taken. You're also going to want to consider the different media elements. So this doesn't just need to be face-on video, like she said in the slide. It can be photos, subtitles, drawings, props, all kinds of items, just making it more interactive and flow better so it isn't just your face for 5 minutes straight. It's also a good idea to switch up the visuals because an entire video of just you talking will be boring, especially because some of you have students who are elementary schoolers. And so try switching to an overhead shot of a whiteboard is one of Jessica's suggestions, and you can also do something like switching to photos of your instrument, like say just your hands and the correct fingering for a note, or your bow hand, or something like that. Here's a handy list of some things to consider. So the first one, a little bit like we said before, is who's your target audience? So do they have short attention spans? The answer is probably going to be yes, especially if you're teaching our Costaño students. Also, what can they relate to? If you're making jokes about Baroque composers they've never heard of, they're not going to find it nearly as interesting if you're making jokes about modern day composers and musicians and bands. The next thing is, what can you do to make your video unique? So you don't want all of your videos to be exactly the same. It can be nice to have that kind of structure, but you want them to kind of stand out and still be engaging. Also, in what order do you want to present your concepts? So this is what you're going to have to think really hard about. You don't want to be explaining to your student the bow hold before they know how to play, left hand, or you don't want to explain finger patterns before explaining embouchure, and you don't want to introduce them to chords before they can identify keys. So just keep in mind what you need to present in what order and in what way it will flow the best. The next thing is, how can you make your video easily understandable and engaging for your students? So don't be similar to other things. Don't be using really difficult terms and boring explanations that won't really translate to a younger audience like our students are. Also, what kind of props will you need? Where will you get them? A lot of this is, we're not going to use a whole lot of props for this, and a lot of what we're doing is really instrument focused, but that is something to consider. If you don't have your instrument for the video, it's going to be a lot harder to teach. Make sure you have everything you need ahead of time. If you're explaining the structure of a reed or how to take a reed out of its packaging, you are going to want to have a packaged reed and not just explain it verbally, because visual aids are very useful. Last thing is, what kind of background do you want to set your video against? So are you going to have something in the background? Or are you going to have, for example, a photo of your instrument and then yourself in the middle? What are you going to have that kind of sets the tone of your video? Alright, so this step 2 is write or draw a storyboard. This is going to be a little bit less applicable to us. You're still, of course, welcome to do it because it can be extremely helpful with planning, but we won't be requiring you to turn it in, and a lot of these you'll have more of a script than a storyboard. So what you would do if you were to write or to draw a storyboard is you're going to create this kind of panel situation, kind of like a comic, with the pictures you will use and what text you will speak over it or put in subtitles over it. For example, the difference between subtitles and narration, and what videos you will use, and if you're going to add effects to certain parts. And this is especially important if your video is more complex. So if you're going over specific ideas and jumping between concepts, you're probably going to want this so that you understand kind of what's going on. So this next part is if you're filming or taking your own pictures, it's also helpful to write a list of the pictures and videos you need so that you can kind of keep track and check them off as you go so you don't accidentally forget something and get to editing the day before you need to put your video up and then get super lost. So from here, you're going to want to film and collect your desired media. Keep in mind the lighting, color, and angle. For example, don't film in the middle of the night and don't film right in front of a window, which is going to cause you to be so backlit that you turn into just a black blobby silhouette. You want your students to be able to see you. All right, so this next part is about creating the actual project within iMovie. So there's a nice little create button when you get to the home screen, and it's in the upper left corner. And so you are going to want to be creating a movie, not a trailer, because the trailers are very structured and have specific parts, and there's not a lot of freedom with how you can design it. You can do it if you want, but it's going to be significantly more challenging. So I wouldn't suggest it. From here, you can title your project and choose a theme, which determines what kind of title and transition slides you're able to use. And an important thing to note is as you progress into your project, some of the themes will automate transitions and title slides. So there could be a pop-up box to disable these, but you might have to manually delete or change in unwanted transitions. If you don't want to deal with this, choose the theme blank, and you will be able to pick the transitions you want. However, your selection of transitions and title slides will be less specialized. So there's also on the viewer where you can see what item you've selected, there's this little crop symbol. It's the third one just above it on the right side. And if you hover over it, it says cropping. And if your video is doing this thing called the Ken Burns effect, which means it's basically zooming in on itself as it goes in an attempt to make the photo more interesting and movement instead of just like still photos with the voiceover, you're going to click that. And then it gives you these options: fit, crop to fill, and Ken Burns, and you're just going to want to change it to fit. And this means it is not going to do a Ken Burns effect, and it's not going to zoom in while you go. So, all right, step 4 is assembling the elements. So you're going to copy or move your media, the pictures and videos, onto your desktop. You can do this by emailing it to yourself if you filmed on your phone, for example, and then downloading it, something like that. From there, you can drag the pictures and videos into your iMovie, which is one of the easiest ways. You can also click the down arrow in the upper left corner of the screen, and I will, at the end, have a screenshot where these specific parts I'm mentioning are. And you can do that, and it's going to give you the option to import elements from your files, which is a few more steps, but it is doable. So you're going to want to drag your media, if you're using the drag and drop method, into the gray area until it shows a little green plus sign, and then you can just drop it there. It should appear at the beginning of your film, which is the very far left, because the timeline goes left to right. And you're going to drag your clips and images into the desired order. So this slide is explaining the transitions. At the top, you can see spin in, spin out, circle open, etc., which is how it's going to go from one image to the next. The orangey trees image is the first, and then the bluish mountains and lake scene is the second image. Like was just shown, step 5 is the transitions. They're going to appear with the visual examples, and if you don't see this box in iMovie, it might be in the tabs at the top. Click on transitions, and a bunch of pictures should pop up in the upper left corner. These are your given transitions, so you can drag and drop to the gray area after your media. Then you can move the tracking line to the beginning, and the space bar is used to press play for your trailer. This is a slightly more detailed image. Again, this little sideways arrow glass with the two arrows pointing towards each other is what the transition is itself. You can see the same on the left, and that's where you're going to be putting the transition, and that's how you can play it. All right, so now you can click titles, which is going to allow you to add some text, and you can choose a title. There are a bunch. There's like upper left corner, bottom left corner. There are ones with effects that they'll like slam onto the screen, and either way you can kind of choose, and there are some options to move it. If you want the text shown over a video or image, drag the title over the media. So you're going to kind of drag them on top of each other. Everything is shown as layers in iMovie, and this will allow the text to be above the image or the video and kind of overlapped. If you don't want them to be on top of each other, you can just drag it into the gray area that doesn't have a video or in between two clips, and it'll just be like black background and text. You're going to type into the text box what you want to show. Pretty standard. Some of the titles only use one font, so you might want to select titles, mostly the standard ones, that allow you to customize the font, while more specialized titles may not. Last, but definitely not least, is sharing, finalizing and uploading your videos. So first you're going to hit the share button and then theater. So your computer should appear to be undergoing a kind of process in your theater, and once it's done you can drag this to your desktop. There's another option, you can download it as a file, which is another one of the options there, or YouTube or email, and that will send it as a file that you can then download by right-clicking, and then you can use that to send to us to upload. So from there, from the desktop, you can upload the MP4 via My Files. It's either going to be an MP4 or like an M4A. It sometimes is different things. Either is fine. And to add the video to your Google Drive, simply drag the MP4 over your Google Drive and it will upload. Pretty straightforward. You can then name the file and share it with us. You can also drag it into an email and email it to us. Either is perfectly fine. Thanks for watching. You can check us out on Facebook, Instagram, or our website, and please consider donating. All of these links can be found in the description.